Today we are going to talk about my favorite subject, student involvement in educational planning. When I first became a teacher, I conducted IEP meetings exactly how I was taught. I wrote the IEP, I invited everyone to the meeting, and I did most of the talking at the IEP meeting. And it wasn't until about 2004 where I realized this was the most awkward way to have an IEP, and there are so many better ways of going about this. Have any of you walked up with a group of people and they're talking about you but not to you? It's a really rude situation, it's uncomfortable, and you kind of wonder whether or not you should even be there. So today, we're going to learn to involve students in their IEP. The beginning of this presentation is geared towards students. It was written to be presented with students. And the reason I want to leave it this way is because you are also going to be provided a copy, so hopefully you would be able to teach your students how to involve themselves in their IEP meetings. Time and time again, we get students who know nothing about their disability. Either that or they have some information, but it's incorrect information. And these students are often relieved once they learn more about their disability. I was talking to a parent at a conference and I said, a lot of parents don't really want their child to know about their disability. What would you say to those parents? And she looked at me and said that they already know. They already know they're different. They're just waiting on you to talk to them about it. So I thought that was really powerful. So today we're going to first go over IEP information and take a little quiz. We're going to watch some I'm Determined videos. We're going to go over an IEP script for students who may be more comfortable reading off of a script rather than just leading their own meetings. Then, if you were doing this with students, you could have students choose different IEP roles, such as one student's going to be the teacher, one student will be the principal, one student will be the parent, and have an actual mock IEP meeting. Then we're going to watch another video and then role play the meeting. So the IEP is required by law. So when the school gets together, they actually have to do this. So the focus of the IEP in your first year of high school changes to focus on getting you ready to do whatever it is you want to do after high school. So your IEP kind of changes from a solely academic focus to a transition focus. And to make plans for after high school, we want to answer 3 questions. Where do you want to work, learn, and live? And once you answer those 3 questions, it actually becomes your post-secondary goal. And you probably have had teachers ask, "Hey, Johnny, what do you want to do after high school?" And you might have said, "I don't know," but they really have to ask these questions so we can start tailoring your education towards those goals. The IEP meeting is all about you, so you need to be there. You need to tell your mom, dad, and teachers the results of your transition assessments. You might not even know what transition assessments are yet, but once we learn about them, you'll find out that these are the assessments that you take to find out what career might best suit you, maybe what social skills you might want to work on, or what you need to learn to live on your own, such as fill out taxes. So once you become more involved in your IEP meeting, you'll be better prepared for life after high school. So let's take a little quiz. Who started your last IEP meeting? Was it your special education teacher, a family member, coach, you, or the principal? Who introduced everyone at the IEP meeting? Was it your special education teacher, a family member, coach, you, or a principal? So who first talked about your strengths and needs at your meeting? Was it the special education teacher, the family member, coach, you, or the principal? Who presented your transition assessment results? Who presented the post-secondary goals? Who presented the annual transition goals? And who ended the meeting by thanking everyone for coming? Was it your special education teacher, a family member, a coach, you, or the principal? So as we went over these things, Sometimes you're the only person in the room who knows everyone at the table. Only you know your teachers, your parents, the principal or counselor, whoever it may be, so you could make those introductions yourself. When you leave high school, a lot of times you're going to be expected to go into a place of work or post-secondary education, like college or a vo-tech center, and you're going to be expected to be able to explain your strengths, your needs, your disability, whatever it may be. And unless we start giving you times to practice in high school, those first times are going to be very, very nerve-wracking. So remember, this is your meeting, and you can and should do all of these things. I'm Determined is a great website for educators and students. It's just imdetermined.org, and I'm going to take a minute and we're going to watch an IEP participation video. And I know sometimes when I talk about getting students more involved and having them lead their own IEP meetings, that some people think, oh, my students would never do that. But students will do what you expect them to do. If you expect them to lead their own IEP meetings and give them different options to do so, they will.
All about my friends. My best friends are John and Zach. Michael and Antoine are also my friends. Family. Mom, Dad, Billy, Jenny, and my nephew Levi and Brandy. And school.
I really wasn't sure how they were going to react when I first started it. I really didn't think they were going to want to come with me on Tuesdays. I thought after a while they'd be like, oh, do we have to go do that again? But instead they were like, are we going to the library on Tuesday? If we didn't do it, they were like, well, are we going to do it next Tuesday? Are we going to go back? All right, guys, today we're going to continue talking about self-determination and having a voice in your own IEP. And when we go through your IEPs, you're going to look at, it gave them a voice in their own program. I mean, one of the very first things that Amanda actually said to me was, it's about me. Shouldn't I know everything about me?
Welcome to my meeting. The people I invited: Mama, Wanda, Glenn, Preston, my dad, my Nana and Papa, my Aunt Crystal, Raymond, and Zoe.
The changes I've seen this year in the children who have been a part of this self-determination project are this grasp of, this is about me. I'm a part of this. This is not about me and I'm excluded, but it's about me and I'm the center of self-determination. They, the teachers and the adults and my parents who are going to help me, need my input. And that was tremendously powerful to watch.
Which kind of IEP is better? The one where you sat there and didn't say anything, or now when you do your presentation?
Now.
Why is now better?
Because I get to read it to everybody.
What does that make you feel like?
A big and strong boy.
I think the first thing with the students I have that I've had to work on is helping them be aware of their disability. A lot of my students are not even aware that they have a disability. So we will work a lot first on disability awareness, which takes a lot of time. I've got to talk to them about what an intellectual disability is and how that impacts them. From then, we really have to work a lot on how to advocate for yourself. A lot of times my students don't know how to ask for help because they don't always know they need help. So we talk a lot about, all right, what is hard for you in school? What do you need, what might you need to ask a teacher help with? Because at first, when people were using it, it was for students with maybe mild learning disabilities or emotional disabilities. I never thought that my students could be part of it. And then when I started bit by bit using it and started seeing how some of my students could now say, you know what, it's hard for me to know when I read what I read. It's hard for me to do this. That's when I realized that my students could also become self-determined. I think for a lot of us, a lot of special ed teachers, and I think a lot of teachers that work with students with intellectual disabilities, we tend to enable our students. We become enablers, not meaning to, but I know I taught at the elementary level and then came to the high school level. And I was doing more work for my kids than they would be doing for themselves. And in the long run, that wasn't helping them when they got to be seniors in high school and had to think about jobs and getting themselves to a job on time, that sort of thing. So I think as I started teaching those skills to them, I started expecting more out of them, out of making them tell me how they're going to solve their problems, because later on I couldn't solve them for them. So I stopped being an enabler.
Was that hard to do?
Yes, because I think not only just me, I think a lot of teachers, you know, that's what our job is. Our job is to help our students succeed. And for me, it was kind of hard sometimes to let go and maybe let them fall down and let them fail before they figured out, I need to do this by myself. You know, Miss Fox isn't going to do it for me. So that was hard for me.
So with the I'm Determined website, they have a lot of great resources, and they actually offer different templates for students. They have a secondary IEP, a preschool IEP, and an elementary IEP template. And they also have a lot of other different resources that we'll talk about here in a little bit. They even have a rubric where if you wanted to make it an annual transition goal that the student start to learn to lead their own IEP, they actually have a rubric that would allow you to grade them on how well they did. So here's an example of one of the rubrics on the I'm Determined site. You can see that it includes IEP awareness, IEP participation, knowledge of content. So if you're thinking, gosh, I don't even know where to start to teach my students about their IEPs, I'm Determined is a great site to help with that. And I found that as a high school teacher, once I started breaking out these elusive folders that have traveled with my students most of the time since the second grade, and the students have no idea what's in them. And once we got them out and I had them come up one by one so we could go over the different things in their file, I had students wanting to stay after class or come in early because I didn't get to them that day, and they really want to know what's in their file. What did I know about them before they ever came in the room? So many of my students that to me is the most heartbreaking are my students with LD. So I'd ask, do you know what a learning disability is? And I'd get, yeah, that means I'm dumb. That's why I'm in here. And that's not what it means at all. Once you start showing students that it's usually just one or two areas and everything else is either in the normal range or sometimes higher, students really gain confidence. They learn more about themselves. They learn more about the areas that they know they might need help in. And once again, this is going to help them advocate for themselves in general education classrooms, in employment settings, and in post-secondary education settings. So there are many, many ways to be involved in your IEP. We saw on the video that students can use a PowerPoint presentation. It breaks my heart when I see so many schools have smart boards, which I always wanted, and then they're using them as a dry erase board. So getting students involved and teaching them those technology skills while just talking a little bit about themselves. Here is an example, and I've included this on your course as well, an example of a PowerPoint that is really, really easy and students can really just fill in the blanks. It's basically a PowerPoint template of how a student could go through their entire IEP to the meeting. And when students start leading their own IEPs, we have found that parents are more likely to come. The student leaves knowing what the IEP meeting was about versus before they just sat there and nodded their heads or stared at the table. And the gen ed teachers had a better understanding of what the students needed and what the IEP meeting was about. You could use a script. Once again, this is also included on the course website. So with the scripts, I know some people get really nervous, and I even use scripts for students to invite people to their IEP meeting. So this is a script that basically you just fill in the blanks and you could read through it if you get nervous or just refer to it when needed. Also, as teachers, we spend a lot of time inviting agencies and parents and general education teachers to IEP meetings. Why are we doing that? Especially when we're dealing with high school students. They can use a phone. they can call. If there is a request sheet, say for the VOTEC Center, they can complete that. Also, students could make their own invitations for IEP meetings using either an email invitation program, or they could even do a Facebook invite, or make their own invitation using some type of word processing program, and then have the students hand deliver those invitations to the individuals. Now, we still have to send out the boring ed plan invitation to meeting just to make it official, but getting something from a student personally means that the other individuals may be more vested in the meeting itself. Students could also do a one-pager. So on I'm Determined, they also give a lot of different examples of just a one-page, hey, this is a little bit about me, my strengths, my preferences, my interests, my needs. And it doesn't take very long to do this at all. And in fact, students really enjoy it. We all like talking about ourselves and really thinking about these things. And I actually went to collect data in New Mexico. And when I walked in, they announced that I was from the Zero Center and part of the Me lesson package. And students had used the Me lesson package that is found on the Zero Center website to make a PowerPoint for their IEP. And I had 3 students saying, can I show you mine? Can I show you mine? So we've gone from being ashamed that we have an IEP and ashamed that we have a disability to, oh, let me show you my PowerPoint. It's amazing. And this is what I did. And I included a video here of me working at the store. So it really can change the focus of IEP meetings. They're no longer this scary, embarrassing place to be where my teachers sit around and talk bad about me. Instead, it's all about me, and this is what I want you to know about me. So here is an example of a one-pager for a student who uses an augmentative communication device. And so this student may not have either a lot of verbal skills or even reading skills, but using different devices, we can get the information that we need to make a one-pager and have the student present it and use the augmentative communication device to let the group know about themselves. So before the meeting, before we ever let students lead their own meeting, we can't just invite them and say, okay, it's your meeting, tell us about yourselves. We do have to actually teach them how to run their own meeting. So they need to know the purpose of the meeting. Once again, a lot of students think their IEP meeting is just a place where teachers sit around and talk bad about them. We need to suggest people to invite. A lot of times the one teacher who the student is not doing very well in their class needs to come, but let's not make it a student, and sometimes it's the student and family, against the whole group. Let's say, hey, Sally, who do you want to invite? I've had students who wanted to invite a friend. They were nervous about presenting and they wanted to invite a friend. So I'd have to explain to the student and the friend that we're going to be talking about confidential things. Are you okay with disclosing those things to your friend? And a lot of times they already know. No, it's fine. I want them here. So why not? If it makes them more comfortable, then let's invite them. And once again, the more we talk about who we are and what we need, the more likely we are to do so in the future. So have the students send invitations to all the attendees or make phone calls. Have students make a list of strengths, challenges, likes, dislikes, and interests. Make a PowerPoint. And role play participating in the IEP. And a lot of the role playing is funny, and some of the students will try to mock the other teachers. But I will say, no matter how much you practice this, some students will let you down. I did have a situation where the student went to invite everyone sitting around the table, and she said, "This is my math teacher, Mrs. Jones. This is my English teacher, Mrs. Smith, the one I hate. And this is," and I just said, stop. No, that's not what we practiced. So, there will be surprises. But during the meeting, attend the meeting. So often students don't want to be there. And this week you were required to read, "Why is this cake on fire?" And to me, that is just the best description of students at their IEP meeting. So just like if we did not invite them to their birthday party up until they were 16, why would they want to go then? They're not supposed to be there. I don't even understand why the cake is on fire. So we have asked students, and we've done different studies, asking students themselves, when do you think someone should have talked to you about your IEP, about your disability? Most of them will say second or third grade, because instead they suffered in silence. They knew they didn't read like everyone else, or they knew they didn't act like everyone else, yet everyone just ignored the fact that they were sitting there suffering. So once they learned about themselves, they thought, oh, you know what, this isn't so bad. Introduce attendees. Once again, the students are the ones who know everyone at the table. Share samples of your work. Every student has strengths, and some of those strengths are outside of the classroom. School can really suck for that kid who isn't that great at math, reading, or writing. But maybe they're a great artist. Or maybe they worked on something mechanical, or maybe they've made a really cool video game because they've learned some coding skills. Let's, instead of just making the meeting all about what the student doesn't do well, which is what we do a lot of times, let's let the student bring in something they're proud of doing, because all of our students have strengths. I've even had a student he was a great skateboarder. So we started the meeting when we talked about his strengths, showed a little video of him at the local skate park. Why not? Let's celebrate the successes, and then we'll also talk about the needs. Tell each other what works best for you. And as a teacher, I had so many fails, but one of them, the student was supposed to get a copy of notes from someone else for science class. And the science teacher came to me and was talking about how lazy my student was because he gets a copy of the notes but doesn't even use them. And so I asked him what the deal was, because his science teacher was saying he's taking the copy of the notes and he's just shoving them in his book without ever looking at them. And finally he looked at me and he said, "She writes in cursive." And my student couldn't read cursive. So that was not helpful. So instead of just checking every accommodation possible, let's stop and take the time to ask the student what works best for you, what would help you. And once again, a lot of times our students have never been asked. We just decide as professionals which accommodations are going to work for them without asking them what actually does. And make recommendations. Why don't we ask students to recommend something for their program? So we're this far in the school year, you know what's going well, you know what isn't. What would help? What do you wish teachers would do that they're not currently doing? And sometimes you'll be surprised at the answers. Another recommendation is, I always ask students, what do you want to learn this year? And they come up with the most profound things that I would have never thought of when I was teaching, and students are starting to text more and more and more. And one of my students, and I actually ask this at the beginning of every school year, what do you guys want to learn? One of my students in an English class said, we go over vocabulary every year, but the words that I need to know how to spell are things like the difference between there and there and there. I don't know which is which. And so we started going over the 100 most commonly misspelled words, and the students were very, very interested, because these are the words that maybe they should have learned in elementary, but they didn't get it then. But they were ready, they were developmentally ready in high school to learn to spell those words and some of the rules to go along with it. After the meeting, thank everyone for coming. This is just a nice gesture in general, and once again, we usually have our students staring at the table the entire time instead of teaching them these leadership skills that they could carry throughout life. Deliver highlights of the meeting to the teachers. So for those teachers, we know that in the textbook that all the teachers are supposed to attend the meeting, and we also know that that usually doesn't happen. So have the student deliver the highlights of the meeting to their teachers. If an accommodation changed, have the student deliver the new accommodation page and say, hey, I used to get this and this, but we're going to try this now. And it will mean so much more coming directly from the student. And having the student discuss the disability, the IEP, and accommodations with others will only help them in the future. Why we expect them to be able to do it in a college setting, but we never prepare them for it in high school, I have no idea. And in high school, it's so scary by that point because we didn't talk to them in middle school. And then in elementary, some students say, maybe my parents needed to talk to my teachers privately as well, but I wish somebody would have started to give me some of the information in elementary, just so I would be prepared throughout the rest of my school career. But instead, we try to keep it a secret. So these are the steps to lead an IEP meeting. Begin the meeting by stating the purpose, introduce everyone, go over your present levels of performance. This means how you're doing in class. Your accommodations, this means the extra help that you get. And another word that we want to talk about is the word accommodations. Some high school students know this word, some don't. If we are not teaching them this word, the first thing they're going to be asked in a college setting is, what accommodations did you receive in high school? If we are not teaching students what this word means, then they're never going to be able to describe that to a disability service office. Annual goals. Your post-secondary transition goals, annual transition goals, transition services. Questions. We want the student to be able to say, does anybody have any questions? Because maybe the student said, well, I'm not doing very well in Miss Smith's class because of this. And Miss Smith is thinking, well, that's not the reason. The reason is because you're not doing any work. So allow the student to say, does anybody have any questions, to give them that control. And close by thanking everyone for coming. So now, if we were doing this presentation with students, and once again, you have the copy of the IEP script, we'd have the students complete it. Now, this next slide came from, I do this presentation a lot with students, and I talk about how it's your meeting, and you can do this all by yourself. Well, I did get a phone call the next year from a teacher who was just laughing and laughing. That said, during the meeting, the parent kept trying to talk over her, and she looked at her parent and said, "Shut up, this is my meeting." So that's not exactly what I wanted the students to do. So yes, it's your meeting, but we also need to talk about decorum. And decorum is the correct or proper behavior that shows respect and good manners. So even though it's your meeting, we have to learn to listen to everyone else's opinions. So when displaying good manners while participating in an IEP meeting means that I will ask another person to speak for me, be kind and respectful, treat others as I would want to be treated, argue loudly if the meeting doesn't go my way, or E, both B and C. And we hope that most students would choose both B and C, but it doesn't always work out that way. So relaxing during an IEP meeting means that I will take a few deep breaths before the meeting begins and believe everyone is there to help me. B, slouch and chew gum. C, ask my parent to speak for me. D, play on my phone during the meeting. And if any of you are working with teenagers, we know that D could happen a lot. But we just want you to take a few deep breaths before the meeting begins and believe that everyone is there to help you. I should take all of the following steps when making introductions, except A, smile and say hello to everyone. B, wait until it is time for a person to speak before introducing them, or C, introduce everyone at the beginning of the meeting. And we want them to do A and C, but we don't want them to wait until it's time for someone to talk and then say, oh, yeah, that's Mr. Jones. To be a good listener during an IEP meeting, I will A, focus on what is being said and not let my mind wander. B, not look at the speaker unless I like what is being said. Or C, yell when things are not going my way. We want our students to focus on what's being said. So this is the part where if we were working with students, we would want everyone to choose a role and actually role play an IEP meeting. So for some students, they've never attended one of their IEP meetings at all. For others, they've sat there quietly and nodded. So this can be a really great activity to kind of get them ready for that role. It's the Students' IEP meeting video is a very boring, long, I shouldn't say boring. So when Jim Martin asks you about this PowerPoint, it's not boring. It is redundant, but it definitely gets the point across. So then you should ask your students, what are you going to do at your next IEP meeting? And I would love to say that all students are super excited to go through this process. Maybe not at first, but they sure do enjoy learning about themselves and what is in that folder. So for some reason, we've kept it a secret. And it's all about them, yet they can't read it. And I think it's very, very enlightening when you see teenage boys looking through their file and saying, oh man, I didn't know that you saw that. That was in 8th grade. And I want to explain this, because we'll have discipline reports and things like that. And I'll just laugh and say, well, you can explain, but do you think you've matured since then? Oh yeah, I would never do that now. So, I mean, it's a nice compilation of how far students have come as well. And then, once again, we would thank all of our students for participating in their IEP training. So, like I said, if you are having teacher-led meetings where we do all the talking, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that there are better ways to do it. And there are studies upon studies on student-led IEP meetings and how student-led IEP meetings are actually setting up those skills, and for students who are leading their own IEP meetings, they have had better post-school outcomes. So we are really doing a disservice to our students by keeping their disability a secret, by having them stare at the table during meetings, and really making it seem like having an IEP is a shameful thing instead of something to be proud of. And this is all about you, and let's learn about you, because we want to help and we want to know more about you.